Hello friends, welcome back. Today we're going to implement map on a prototype. As you've seen from applying array.prototype.map or simply map earlier, the map method returns an array of the same length as the one it was called on. It also doesn't alter the original array as long as its callback function doesn't. In other words, map is a pure function and its output depends solely on its inputs. Plus, it takes another function as its argument. It would teach us a lot about map to try to implement a version of it that behaves exactly like array.prototype.map with a for loop or array.prototype.forEach. Note, a pure function is allowed to alter local variables defined within its scope, although it's preferable to avoid that as well. Write your array.prototype.mymap, which should behave exactly like prototype.map, and you may use a for loop or a for each. Cool. So I think I'm going to do a for loop because I think that's more specific, and I'll do a for each afterwards. First off, we're going to create a for loop. So we're going to let I equal 0. I is less than. Okay, so this is the kind of maybe a tricky part. We're calling this function on an array. And so how do you do that? You get the prototype comes when we call this function, what we're doing is calling it on the thing that we're passing it on. So s.this. So because s is an array, it's going to have array prototype functions associated with it. Here we're setting my map as a prototype of array. We're adding this to the array options. So s.myMap. And so what we can do is say this. And we'll call it this.length, right? So in this example here, because s is assigned up here, for the first element, we're saying this. So this element dot length, the length. So 0, 1, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So I is less than 4. And then we want to increment I. And then with each one, what we want to do is add to the new array. So the new array dot push. So we're adding on to the new array. What do we want to write? We want to add on whatever the callback function is, right? So we're passing a callback into here. So when someone calls my map, they're going to be calling it on an array, and then in there we're going to get this function. We don't know what this function is now, so we just want to be able to dynamically assign it, right? So we're saying callback. And we're calling it on this, but it's this. If we just put this in here, that would be the whole array. So we need it to be this at position I. So each time it's going to be passing in the individual pieces of this. So your new array comes in, and then for each element, we're calling the callback function on each individual bit, and then we're adding that to the new array. If we were to console log this, this at position I, you're going to see we're going to go 23, 65, 90, 98, and 5. And we're passing those in. And so once we're done with that loop, if we were to console log the new array, you're going to see that it loops through and it adds each of these. Is it already doing it? 20. 46. Oh yeah, it's actually already logging those through. But if we were to just, instead of making this times 2, it did that. We would still just pass through. So we're just assigning it to the new one. So yeah, here we've got, well, this is the response. We want 46, 130, 196, 10. So I'm pretty confident that this would pass the test because we're passing in the new array. And your code should not use map. So this will probably pass the test. Once we console log the new array, or instead of doing that up here where we're in our function, obviously we don't really want to console log the new array. We would want to console.log the new s here. And let's get rid of the console log in here. Now we know that we're iterating through each element. Oh, and do you notice how each element that we iterate through it's 23, 65, and 98, and 5 here, but then once it's assigned to the new array, it's 46, 130. Why is that? Because we passed the callback function with each individual element there. Yeah, we could say like, let array individual. We could refactor this and say this at position I, and then we pass the individual element into the callback function. This gives us the right answer as well, but it actually almost makes it more readable, right? If you're reading this code, you can say we're creating an individual element at position I, so we know that that's each individual element, and we're pushing onto the new array the result of passing the individual element into the callback function, and then we return the new array. And now if we console log, so here we pass in this original array and we do my map, so we run this function as the callback function, or as the we're passing this method on the array object, and then within that we're doing this callback function that is returning the new s, and then here we're logging out that, which is just the item times 2. So we're going through 23 times 2 is 46, 65 times 2 is 130, 98 times 2 is 196, and 5 times 10 is 10. And if we run the test, I think they pass. Okay, cool. How would we do it for the for each loop method? Okay, so with the for each, what we would want to do is we would want it to say this dot for each. Oops. And then we're passing in a function here. We could say let's just do the ES. Well, yeah, let's do it the original way. So we'll go function, and then we're going to say the individual element, and then within here, for each element, well, what we want to do is say new array dot push the callback of the individual element. And we get the right answer. Okay, so this is the for each way. This is the way to do it using a for each loop. I'm not writing it in ES6. If we wanted to write it in ES6, instead of doing that, we would go like that. This is the cleaner way. You're going to see this more often than not in production code in 2020. So yeah, this is just the other way to do it with for each with either ES6 or the original function. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next lesson.